over the years, and you work with a wide range of filmmakers, producers, co-producers and editors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able now, after all these years, are you able to put your finger on what makes a good movie? Or what makes a good idea into a good movie?
No, but I can give you a close approximation of what I think that is. Of course, the classic example and the classic answer is the nobody knows anything answer, and of course nobody does. However, the only thing that I can, that after all these experiences, and I've produced over 100 movies in, all over the world, in all of the continents, and I think the only guide I think I have is my own stomach and my own nose. And either you feel something's going to be okay and going to be good and going to be worth spending, the next few years doing. And as one gets older, of course, and time gets shorter, one looks at things in a slightly different way. So I would say that the answer to that is that the answer changes throughout your life. And I'm sort of at the stage at the moment where I'm sort of not into long development periods. I'm looking for more mature projects. But then again, that comes naturally when you kind of get to my stage of the career, in that I'm very often working with people that I've already worked with for a number of years. And so there's this kind of a shorthand and also a kind of a responsibility that, and loyalty to people, so that you kind of stick with them, even though you might not be kind of 100% on board. You kind of, we've come this far, so we just as well finish, kind of thing.
So are those the main features to become a good producer?
God knows what one needs to become a good producer. I mean, it's we can list all of the so-called professions or trades or titles or headings that you need to use, but I think that mainly to be a good producer you need to be a good listener, and you need to be able to really act as a bridge between the vision of the director and the audience somehow, and somehow negotiate those choppy waters in the creative process, whereby yes, we are involved in a creative process, but we're also involved in an industrial process as well. We're in the business of turning money into light. And that is, on the one hand, a sort of a very vague way of saying that with a cultural artifact which has such a big budget, then a certain amount of responsibility comes with that as well. So it's complicated, but not kind of in the way that one usually thinks about it. I kind of find it complicated in making, fulfilling my duty to the artist, and fulfilling the duty to the public, and fulfilling the duty to the funder as well, because it comes with a certain responsibility, I think.
What are those things that still excite you about your job after all these years?
I come from a theatre background, and so yes, I like shooting, but I also like the process of working with actors, even though it's not a hands-on process with me. I have a huge amount of respect for actors, because they're putting themselves on the line all the time. They're risking so much, they're giving so much of themselves, they're showing, fearlessness and, being able to negotiate kind of dangerous things with their personalities, with their psyches, with their bodies as well. And so it's very easy to joke about actors, and people, I think, do that in a very cynical way sometimes. But I have a massive respect for the profession, and without the profession, there is nothing. That having been said, there's nothing better than finally getting what you hope is going to be the last draft of a script, and reading it and then going, yes, he's got it, we can do this, I can sell this, I can convince people to get involved. And that it's a series of kind of little bits of inspiration that get you through the process, I think.
We're in Latvia, we are really into animation for the last years, and you have also produced some animation that has been well received.
Yes.
What would you say are those things that can you compare live action cinema to animation?
I think we can from a dramaturgical perspective, but then the whole industrial process is so different and so kind of long drawn out, and that having been said, in a strange kind of way, it's sort of much more controllable in a way than it is with having human beings involved in the production process in front of the camera. So it's a very different way of doing things. I've done it, a few times. I've done kind of a puppet movie called Strings with the guys from Zentropa in Denmark. I did the film called Rulli, The Golden Key, which I did with the Finnish guys, MRP in Finland, and it was a really new experience. Dramaturgically, it's not so different, story-wise and dealing with things, but you can do a lot with the voices, and you can do a lot with music, and you can do a lot with songs and things like that. I find it kind of, one uses the expression "fix it in the mix" kind of thing, but with animation you're kind of fixing it in the mix all along, sort of thing. So I find it's a very stimulating way of making movies for me.
But is animation a bit easier or more challenging?
I think it's much more challenging, and you need to have a very specific mindset and a very specific sense of longevity and concentration, and it's a very, very different discipline. And you need to be very, very disciplined to do it, because it's depending entirely on you and your team, kind of thing, the director and their team. So yeah.
Why animation has become such a great way to express things nowadays? I think
I think it always has been a great way to express things. I don't think that there's necessarily anything more special about these days, except as the world gets a little bit more dangerous, and politically and geopolitically, the world is changing more rapidly than we expected in ways which we never really expected. Perhaps animation, by the very nature of its production, gives us a certain distance, but it also allows the narrative to speak in different ways. It also has the advantage of taking place over quite a long period of time. So whilst it might reflect a specific period, it's not news kind of thing. If it takes five years to make the average animation, 4 or 5 years, it's the world can change a lot in that time, and the relationship to the art can change a lot in that time. So there's also a certain kind of Brechtian distance that the animated image gives to the human experience as well, I think, which allows possibly people to use the idea of metaphor and use the idea of reflecting society, but through a metaphorical lens, much more easy. I was very happy with Flow because I also, alongside my European Film Academy thing, I'm the president of the Lux Award, and we had some very interesting debates about the film, and you very unanimously came to the decision that it should be the film of last year. So it's an extraordinary piece of work, and I look forward very much to seeing what comes next.
Do you think will Flow change the scene of animation?
I think it already has, changed certain things. To come back to your original question, about, my response, nobody knows anything. Who would have said that, this film would have had such an impact, 5 years ago? I remember them telling me about, the film being screened in Mexico City to this massive, massive audience, and it, communicated beautifully to, people who had no idea what this thing was and had never seen anything like it before. So it's very, very exciting, but it's also part of the lottery as well. So, yeah.
You touched already the subject of geopolitical things. Also, we live in times of war and global polarization. Do you think European Film Academy has certain responsibilities for filmmakers from smaller countries and countries touched by these very subjects?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we use our kind of collective strength as artists and as filmmakers in the service of society. I mean, when I came on the board of the European Academy a long time ago now, it was my stated aim that I wanted to politicize the Academy, and I wanted us to use the possibilities that we had for publicity, the possibilities we had with artists and things like that, to be an activist organization and to work on behalf of the dispossessed, to work on behalf of the oppressed filmmakers in certain places, and also to defend filmmakers who were in danger. That culminated in us playing a leadership role, and myself playing a very, very, very upfront role in the Oleg Sentsov case, and in working to get Oleg freed and working on quite a big campaign. After Oleg was freed and we looked back on it, I said to myself, listen, we were just acting like making it up as we go along, and I thought that there is need for an organization for something which professionalizes the defense of filmmakers, and so we founded this organization called the International Coalition for Filmmakers at Risk, which we did with IDFA, the documentary festival in Amsterdam, and Rotterdam Film Festival, and it's now a fully functioning, running NGO used in the defense of filmmakers like Jafar Panahi, who is here now, who is one of our patrons. We've been backing a lot of cases like Mohammad Rusulov, etc., etc. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that subsequent to the Russian invasion of the illegal war in the Ukraine, that we raised over €500,000 as a fund to help Ukrainian filmmakers, and we distributed that through a series of micro grants of €1,000, €2,000 in the immediate aftermath of the invasion, so people had some kind of emergency money if they needed to survive for the next month, or they needed to get out of the country, or whatever, for any kind of reason, for medicine for their families, or whatever. And so I think that's the kind of talk is cheap. And there's nothing worse than, I keep thinking of Team America and the Film Actors Guild, and these artists sort of talking about saving the world from destruction and tyranny and things like that. Well, we don't just talk about it, we've actually done it, and we will continue to do it, and I hope my successors will continue to do it as well.
Looking back at your 25 years as a chair, what are the things you're most proud of?
I think giving voices to causes like the cause of the International Coalition for Filmmakers at Risk. I think this, for me, is a very important aspect of our work. I've been very, very happy to work on a number of projects with the Academy, which take take the idea of education very seriously. Education, education, education. We have the European Film Club, we have the Young Audience Award, we have the Symposium of Youngsters, we have a special program for filmmakers under 36 to be able to become members for a reduced rate. We have the European Universities Film Award. And I think if we don't kind of make an effort to educate people in intelligent and significant filmmaking which makes a contribution to society and makes a contribution to possibly certain kinds of shifts in society, then if we don't do that, we won't have a film heritage to defend in future, you know. So and that alongside, you know, the word film heritage springs to mind, and that also is another aspect of the academy that we have set up since I've been on board, and that is a whole heritage department which does the treasures of European film, etc., etc. You know, so everything fits together quite nicely, I think. But you know, of course, our main goal is to position and promote and platform the best in European cinema to a global audience. But I think, you know, for me, there is always something extra that we have to put back in, you know. So the activism side of it is very important.
Looking at the selection of this year's European Film Academy nominees, if you look at all the variety of films and all the subjects that they're touching, what do they tell us about where European cinema is going?
Well, I think it's very interesting because it does tell us that we are still a very diverse and very artistically driven community, that we still take our filmmaking very seriously. But I think this year's selection shows that there is a kind of a sense that you can do that, but you can also be entertaining as well. I think that we've moved away from these kind of, you know, epic, dreary kind of 5-hour exercises in post-communist angst, and moved into an area where, you know, you can have films like Sentimental Value and Jafar Panahi's film kind of competing side by side. I love the idea that, you know, as a co-production, we can also support kind of talent from outside of Europe as well, even though technically it's a European film. So, you know, I think that's great, you know.
Our this year's Latvian nominee for animation, Tāda, is
yes,
really not easy to watch.
No. But it's fabulous.
Do you think that they're onto something, and do Academy has the responsibility to protect this difficult cinema?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what we're about, and you know, hopefully we can act as a kind of beacon and give courage to people who, you know, may think that their idea is impossible or completely crazy or whatever. It's, you know, it's all about the quality with us, and it's all about excellence. And, you know, whatever the idea is, however mad it is, however transgressive or dangerous or whatever, if it's of quality and if it's of a standard, you know, from whichever country it comes from, big, small, whatever, then, you know, the European Film Academy here is to support excellence. And in the case of Dog of God, I mean, that is, you know, an extraordinary piece of work, an extraordinary creative act of excellence, and I'm very pleased that it's here.